Same photographs, same locations, boring. Looking a bit deeper will improve your photography. So I've been making a few notes on today's video. On a recent trip to Cornwall, I went to a location that I've been to before, and I think that's a great thing to do. And certainly for me, going back to this place was fantastic because I went to somewhere where I've got lots of fond memories. It's very much a favourite place of mine. The problem with that, it means I've been there several times and I've taken lots of different images and photographs. And one of the risks of going back to the same places time and time again is you just end up with these really boring photographs which really just repeat what you've done before. And although you enjoy being there, you're not really growing as a photographer or adding to your portfolio. So I had to do something different to improve my photography. Changing the time of day is one way of doing it, but I've been there early morning, midday, late in the evening, so doing that wasn't going to achieve my goal either. Narrowing your focus increases your creativity. But you see, the thing is, metaphorically, when you narrow what you're looking at, you have to work harder to create something compelling to look at. I've worked on a lot of projects, my Dartmoor 20 project, a mini project on Brentor Church. And what I've found out through all of these, whether these projects are big or small, you're forced to get a little bit more creative with the photography that you do. You need to work for the shot. And when you're working for that shot and you're having to consider how you're going to make something a little bit different to your last image, but in keeping with the same theme, that's when you start to grow as a photographer. So how are we going to actually achieve this in our photography? Well, one of the things I always do when I get onto a location is I think about starting with the end in mind. I try to pre-visualize what it is I'm trying to achieve with my photography and with this particular image or set of images. One of the favorite ways of presenting images for me is by using a 3x3 grid. And setting that inside a square, that tends to really sort of focus the mind a bit more by setting some boundaries for that work. So something like this, where you've got a square with 9 images in total arranged in it. You can do your own versions of it. It doesn't have to be square. For me, I like to work in mono. So the first 2 images that I took of these ropes are all about the tonal range. I like the viewpoint. I wanted to get down low, I wanted to get it close to it and get the contrast between the ropes and the rocks and the textures on there. And I knew when I took these, they would be in black and white. They're also very symbolic, aren't they? They're very much of their place of the Cornish fishing village. And I knew they would look really good in black and white. The next 2 photographs are very much about observation. If you can't see it, then you definitely can't photograph it. And with this first image, it's only going to be a photographer who spends ages looking at rocks with waves breaking over them. Well, other people do as well, but not as intently as a photographer. A photographer is looking for the right point, the right size wave, the points at which it breaks, the pattern that the sea makes around the base of it, the way the rivulets water run down the face of that rock, looking for that point, that moment in time when it actually looks its best, and then trying to capture that in one single frame. And this second image which I'm going to look at to do with rocks and waves was really definitely about observation, but observation in a different way. It was about noticing the different tonal ranges, noticing that against this cliff face it wasn't just one tone of rocks. Some were darker, some were lighter. And I like the way that these lighter ones worked really, really well with that dark, inky background. So I think rust is part of the fabric of the fishing village. It's where seawater and iron strike each other, there's always going to be rust. And it didn't feel right to me that any project on a seaside town or a fishing village would be complete if I didn't have some pictures in there involving a certain amount of rust. And there's another term that we haven't mentioned yet in this video, about feeling. A project is more than just visual. It has to talk to you, not just about how the location looked, but how it felt to be there. The things what enticed you, that you were attracted to. In this case, I was very much attracted into the way that these rusty surfaces were there against the rock and against the rest of the settings. In the first image, where we've got this hole cut out in this bollard, I just wanted to throw the background completely out of focus so we could see the sheen and the pattern on the surface. And on the second image, it was more important about where this chain just sat against the rope, against the bollard itself. I squashed the chain up a little bit, to be honest, because I needed to cut out everything else around it. I knew exactly what I wanted the viewer to look at. I normally avoid man-made things in my photographs, and the reason for that, I guess, is because I just want to feel that I'm out in the wilderness. But in this project, once again, forcing me to look at things differently, narrower geographical area and subject meant that I had to include man-made objects. Where the sea meets the land, or meets in this case the harbour walls, that is a really important part of the story. It's that point of change, that point of tension between the natural world and the man-made world. To emphasise this, I used a slow shutter speed, one where the water was silky and smooth, and yet the harsh lines of the harbour side walls were there and clear for everybody to see and enjoy. And a fishing village isn't complete without a fisherman's hut, so I just had to include that section of it. I didn't want to include the whole hut and have it overpower the other images, so I've literally just gone in for a small section showing the door and the window. So I'm going to try and make sense of all this, and right at the beginning of this video I talked about how it's important to think about the end in mind when you're producing these photographs. Before we do that, we've got to go and do a few basic things inside of Photoshop to set this up. This isn't meant to be a detailed editing session, but if somebody wants that and you're interested, then please subscribe to my newsletter, Exposed Thoughts, and through that you can send me some comments and some information, and maybe we can put together some kind of live stream or something for the future. Right at the beginning of the video, I mentioned how it was important to start with the end in mind. And that's certainly what I was doing when I took these images. I knew they were going to be black and white, and I knew the images themselves were going to be square. So that gave me my starting point and my boundaries to work around. So the first thing was to create this blank white canvas inside of Photoshop. And I simply drew and arranged a 3x3 grid over that with an even gap in between all of the images. So I had some way of arranging them. So the first image that I'm going to put onto the grid is actually one of the last ones I took. It's the man-made one. It fits well in the bottom corner of the frame. And when I go to the second image that we're putting in, I've got another image which sits well in the bottom as an anchor, which is this part of the fisherman's hut. And the third one we add in is the second one that I took of the water. The reason that I put these here, they're a good base to the image, not because of just their subject matter, but because of they are actually physically down towards the floor and at the bottom of the picture. In the village we've got the water, we've got the interface with man, we've got two similar images left and right which help hold your eyes in on either side. So when we look at our next picture going in there, we've got the first one that we put together of the rocks themselves on the right hand side. And you'll notice if you look at this and remember it, that we've actually got the rocks on the right and the darker area leading in towards the left. Now our fifth image is a nice center image. It sits easily in the middle of the frame. Yes, it's a different texture and it's different to the one that I've just put up, but we've got that nice hole in the middle, and I think that hole drives your eye into the middle of the frame itself. The sixth image that we're going to add in is another one with the rocks. Now do you see with these now how the composition, these two images were really created in my mind first, thinking about the end in mind. The reason being that both the rocks are on the left hand sides of their compositions. The water is in towards the right, and by doing it that way I've got these nice firm edges to the frame of the cliff faces and everything moving towards that center hole in the middle. So what have we added in for number 7? So number 7, we've added in the ropes. Again, it's on the right hand side. The darker area is slightly towards the left. Now we've got this nice textures at the top of the frame, and they really work quite well together. I like the way that these are on the edge as well. So we've now got a theme developing where we've got some strong edges to the frame, and where everything's leading and looking in towards the center. I think that's quite important to do here. I thought the chain link worked well because it matched and fitted with the idea of rust with the image below, and in terms of tying, fastening, holding things together, it kind of worked in there as well. And I also think that I can certainly see this pattern where the rope meets at the top, crosses the chain to the bottom corner, and then back out to the second set of ropes. If you need to know how I put this grid together, how I completed the editing on these images, then please subscribe to my newsletter, Exposed Thoughts. Until then, get out and enjoy your photography.